in this episode, we're going to talk about the elusiveness of racism and why it's still a problem in 2021.
Welcome to another episode of Juxtaposed. It's your boy, MVP, with K Styles, and we have a special guest today, a friend of the podcast, GOAT.
That's I. How's it going, y'all?
Yo,
How you feeling over there, man?
Feeling good. A little bit hotter than I like things to be, you know. I like it to be cold, but, you know.
Sweat check. Okay.
Don't want to be glistening on camera.
Yeah.
Glowing for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
I always got to give MVP his shout out, and it's, you know, they say flowers these days because his intros is full of energy. This is like, I'm just like, all right, cool, man, you got it. You got to do the intros.
Facts.
But definitely happy to have my man Goat here.
It's good to be here. Good to be here.
He's been a family of we now forever, so you know.
It's been a while. That's
only,
for sure.
Yeah, it's only right. So, as we talk about with Juxtaposed being a safe place to have, you know, different conversations, sometimes difficult conversations. This is a difficult conversation we're going to, try to attack today. And to give a little backstory of why this even came up, you know, and why we won't even talk about it is like the unfortunate happenings in a couple of weeks ago in Atlanta, where this terrorist, because I'm gonna call him what it is, decided that he wanted to go and shoot Asian women and Asian people, and shoot anybody. Is ridiculous to me because of his own issues. And it just triggered me to the point where you think of this as like, this is that racism rearing its ugly head again.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh man, because this is like a lot to unpack for this topic, man.
It's a hot button topic,
Bro.
For sure.
It's something that it's such a touchy subject because I think that part of the problem with racism, that's why I coined the title "The Elusiveness of Racism," is that it's able to exist in a place where a lot of people are aware of its existence, but then we're not essentially doing the things we need to eradicate it as a whole. It just goes from one thing to another thing, and it's just cycle that keeps perpetuating. And when
spirals, yeah.
When something happens, then people are like, "Oh, this cannot. We need to make sure and stand with people." And I'm like, I accept that, and that's true. We're all in the same ecosystem together.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about the root cause of the problem.
True.
So
and to go off of the root cause, before we actually jump into the actual what happened with the shootings, I want to address something that I find a concern, and I think would be a good way to start it off. So with racism starting off with like the parents and the grandparents and the people before that, like what do you think? Well, one, do you think that contributes to people in our generation being racist? That's the first question.
In terms of it being handed down, like generational racism.
In the generation, right? And if you do think that's still a thing, when does it stop? Because I feel like, can you blame someone for having the opinions and being racist if they've been brought up like that?
I would have to say that you can blame them because we live in a society today where information is easily attainable. We're no longer in the 60s and 70s where every piece of information that we got would typically come from people around us. At that time, newspapers were becoming a thing. Of course, TV was a thing. But for the most part, it was still person-to-person information. So you were kind of I guess, held into that ecosystem of what you grew up around. Whereas today, we have a vast spectrum of media sources, and you can, regardless of what you're being told generationally, you can determine what you do and don't align yourself with. And even if you were to come from a heritage of overt racism, as an adult, to still carry on that mindset, it says to me that you're choosing to continue with that, because even if your parents were to say anything about any group, forget just black people, but any group, you can go find out about that. And then the world is so diverse today in terms of the schools and the workplace. You're going to encounter the same people that you may have grown up hearing negative things about. So you're able to start forming your own opinions. So even if that generational hatred still exists, once you're an adult, I think that it lies in you to make the decision. And if you stick with that, that's you. That's no longer something that was just ingrained. It is who you are. That's how I
Okay.
see it, at least.
Okay, Styles.
I definitely agree to a certain extent.
Okay.
There's one caveat where I like to throw in there. It's like the problem is because racism is so elusive, and I'm gonna use the title in this show the whole time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think the systems are in place to not have people even have the conversations about race, especially in America. Race has become this weird, taboo, for lack of a better word, where if you say something about race or you call somebody out about race, then it's a problem. Um, and I think as a result, people align their opinions about race based on political motivations, based on other things, and then also these people live in these same circles. Like you say, like I think we both live, well, all three of us live in metropolitan areas where it's
Yeah.
very hard for us to not interact with other people of different races, um, genders, sexual orientation. It's you cannot really avoid that. Whereas
It's impossible. Yeah.
you live in
Yeah.
other places that are a little bit spread out in the middle of the country, you don't have that, right? You don't have the access, and so it is possible for them to do it. I'm not saying that they're right, and I'm not saying that they're not. They're still very responsible for their actions.
Of course.
I just think that the problems that we're having are still systematic. And I want to clarify, I'm not saying, oh, everybody, woe is me, the man's against me or anything like that. But I do,
Right.
like, we're aware that there's been certain things and certain cases where things are done disproportionately affecting, things are done that disproportionately affect, certain groups. And I don't know how people don't see that. So.
Yeah, because there's definitely been things put in place. One of the things I noticed is just like resources and and people of different races, like white people, having those resources.
Straight to the facts.
Well, just because of generation thing, and this is
Yeah.
the keep it centered around the generation thing. There was already stuff put in place for them to grow and have these resources. And now when you have a race like, say for example, black people, we were already started at the bottom and we've been trying to grow and climb, but those things have already been put in place that it makes that super difficult. But it's like we see it, but I think some people don't have the visibility into that. So that could be a reason why some people think that it doesn't exist, because they don't have the visibility, because they're coming from a family where their resources is off the chart. Like they don't even their mind is not even tuned to that channel.
Uh, and that is one of the things that was most frustrating, going back to the middle of the pandemic when the whole George Floyd thing happened, because people were kind of shocked. People were very surprised, and I'm like, this is not new.
Yeah,
This is not, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is this is not, we have, and people say, oh, well, because of technology. Listen, the same thing was happening back in 91 or 92 with Rodney King. And there was no technology. The video camera they were recording on was not a small one. It was not a cell phone. So it's like, these things have been happening consistently. And it's gotten to the point where it's like, oh, yeah, here they go again, complaining about this. And I'm like, no, these are literally happening. This stuff is literally happening on a regular basis.
Right.
And it's like, I'm tired of knowing all these people's names for the fact that they were killed unjustly.
Right.
You understand? Like, that to me, it's like, well, when are we going to get to the result of the actual, resolve the actual problem?
Right. What you're saying lends itself to a quote from Will Smith where he said, racism isn't becoming worse, it's being recorded.
Yeah.
And that is true. That's what is actually taking place. And in the beginning of all of this, you mentioned the situation that just took place in Atlanta. A situation like that, we would not have been privy to the knowledge of what took place because, yes, in this scope of things, we do hear a lot about what's happening with black people. But I don't know that we are necessarily as educated or as aware of what's happening amongst other ethnic groups. So something like this would have definitely otherwise gotten swept under the rug.
Correct.
And now it's like it's the biggest media. And because of that, I've just recently become aware of a lot of don't get me wrong, when this whole COVID thing first started, there was a bit of news about people of Asian descent being attacked and things like that. But I just recently listened to an entire podcast that outlined a variety of different attacks that have taken place, whether it be in New York, San Francisco, parts of the South. I wasn't aware that a lot of this was happening. And it's a little bit different to hear that because typically you hear about us being on the receiving end and not other ethnic groups. And, that just takes itself right back to the fact that maybe this stuff isn't so new. Maybe it's just the fact that it's being recorded and we're a lot more privy to what's happening out there.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, because I was watching the news and they were, someone was speaking on what happened with the Asian Americans, and they were saying, and it sounded so similar to the conversations I've had with my friends, and they were saying, hey, this has been happening for a long time, and no one cares.
What are the ethnic groups of your friends, by the way, just so that I could get a little bit more perspective?
Oh, well, when I say this particular group was my black friends.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like, I've had conversations where it's like, yeah, people like kind of what you were saying, K Styles, like this has been happening, Rodney King and all these other things. So we know. And I just thought it was interesting that it was the Asian American kind of not reporting, but just commenting on the news about how this is affecting their community.
Right. And
it's been going on for a while. And it's like, wow, it sounds very familiar,
Absolutely.
And I think that's an issue. And I think that's why we have to have these conversations.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big issue.
Agreed. And I think that one of the things that's happening is because everybody is siloed in their own, in their own spaces, what happens is the fact that we don't know that, I didn't know, like Goat said, I did not know that this is something that they were facing. I knew there was a lot of ridiculousness and, with the former president. I was trying to find the correct way to say that.
Most PC way of saying it possible.
Yeah, the former president and his, deliberate attempts at pointing the cause of this at, the Chinese virus, he would say all the time. And I'm like, bro, like that is dumb. And I go on the record, like we had another podcast where we're like, oh, these people are dumb. Like, no, I would say that is dumb. There was no justification for that. And like with many of his decisions, he didn't feel like he thought past a certain, like the actual reaction. Like just like he said it and then that was it. He never, the deeper layers of thought did not seem common to him. So it's just crazy that we could live, close to each other and not know that these some of the problems that we're having. And it comes down to me at the core is just general empathy for other people's issues, because this has become such a common thing in Black America, and it's known, it's expected to the next case. Whereas when it happens to other races, then they're like, "Oh, this is ridiculous," nobody's talking about it. I'm like, well, talking about it seems to have not given the result that we would have expected at this point, and
Right.
it goes back to just the general elusiveness of racism, because the system is working to the point where the people who theoretically shared experiences at the negative hand of racism, with I guess there's no positive hand of racism, but either way, at the negative hand of racism, are siloed in their experience, so that they don't realize that we have the same issue, and if we were to work together, we might actually be able to solve this problem.
Right. And I just want to interject really quickly to build off of something you said. Because when this whole thing started, yes, our former president, that he did say things openly like, I call it the Chinese virus because it's from China. Do you think that catapulted some of the hate that we saw? Or do you think it would have happened despite what he may have said?
I think it played a part. I think
You
it played a
think so?
big part because, one, it's like, well, COVID has been a real thing for us for the last year, right? And some people still don't believe it, and the people who are believing it are saying, well, especially his avid followers, the same followers who said, he told to go talk to Mike Pence, and they stormed the Capitol. It's like it's like there are repercussions for the things that you say, especially when you have power. And you have power is when people will listen to you and actually do what you say, right? And so in my mind, he is definitely at fault for some of the recent issues. Now, there's been a lot of things, Asian Americans have had to deal with, going back to, the Second World War. Like, they have not had a great time either. It's
Right.
just they've not. But I definitely
Right.
would say the current thing does play a part. Like everything going on with that guy said, definitely plays a part. So MVP.
And so let me answer your question first, and then go to what I want to say. So I do think that these things were happening, but it definitely heightened
Yeah.
when the former president the former president said what he said, right? But my issue with society and people is, and this can go back to even when 9/11 happened and the Muslim thing, and it's like, I'm tired of people taking a group of people who did this and then putting it on all group of people. And the reason why I'm like so passionate about it is because as a Black person,
Right.
people will, like, especially Black guy dreads, you know what I mean? They're already going to put me in a group of whatever they think Black people do. Like, whether that is like, they're not good dads, or, they're thieves and they're hoodlums and stuff like that.
Stereotyping.
They're
is
thugs. Like,
huge.
I don't like that was a specific group of people who did that.
Not even individuals. Don't even say a
Individual,
group.
a group of individuals.
Yeah.
Who did that? There we
Right.
go. And then to go to the COVID in where it originated, which is it confirmed that it originated in China?
I mean,
Just based off what we know right now, I'm going to say it appears that way because
Yeah.
the virus, it seems like that's where it spawned. That's where the initial reports were coming from, where all of the initial deaths were coming from, and then it just slowly but surely expanded. We still don't have any real information as to what.
yeah.
We don't know if
Right.
someone was just snacking
Right.
on some bats, or this was something that was cooked up, cooked up in a lab.
Can I get a 2-piece for sure? But I mean, even and I'm probably going so far and crazy with this one, but even
Right.
with the HIV thing and
Right.
how they were blaming it on
Africa? Yeah.
So it's like it seems like society isn't getting better with the information and being able to like compartmentalize what's happening. It's like, okay, if I see someone doing okay, all that whole group of people in that race is like that, or and I don't understand why that is.
So that being said, because the stereotyping is definitely a huge thing, but if you were to take that and remove the negative connotation that comes along with stereotyping, in yourself, you don't ever realize that from time to time you might say, you know what, that sounds like something a white person did, or that sounds like something a black person did. Because I think we also do our own type of stereotyping. We're not using that stereotyping to formulate hate. We're not using it as a reason to eradicate an entire people. But I think that's somewhat inherent to all of us. It's just, what do you do with that information? You know,
real quick, K Styles. We literally have the game called Blasphemy, or what is it? You're not black enough. What is it? What is it called?
I haven't heard of this one.
Know what
Oh, you ever heard the game?
Nah.
Oh, it's like a card game, and it's like, yo, like, it's certain things that you would think that black, like, for example, have you seen Soul Food?
Yeah. And if a black person says they didn't see it, it'd be like, are you black?
Are you? So
like, where are you from?
To respond to what you said, yes, that is a thing. That is a thing.
So
Go
I
ahead.
would say that I think that
I haven't seen Soul Food, by the way.
Hold on, what? Hold up. Really?
I'm serious.
I'm about to sweat off my brow, man. It's like, no, go ahead.
So I want to say that I do think that from just a simple human experience thing, we put things together, and it's like how you drive from one place to another, and you're like a place you drive every day and you not pay attention. Our brain just puts things together for faster processing, and that's how it works. The problem is when we don't check the unconscious biases that come with a lot of these stereotypes. Because I'll give you one that I actually get from black people about me, and I'm still irritated about it. So I had somebody once tell me, not to go deep in the situation, but essentially I had there was a group of people at my job who were talking about something race related, and they were not they weren't black, okay? Like they
like, come on, get your shit off.
They were black.
They were not
This is a
black,
safe
right?
place.
They were not black, right? And as far as I was concerned, I feel they were speaking. It was around the George Floyd thing, and they were speaking on our behalf and saying, "Well, the black employees are tired of saying this." And I'm like, first of all, who did you talk to, right?
I never said this.
Listen, I think I am pretty vocal, of the group of people at my job. I'm very vocal. I'm like, I don't want these people speaking on my behalf because, for one, I come from a country where I am a majority. So I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and literally we are the majority. There are a lot of Indians, there are a lot of Asians, but we are the majority. So I don't have the experience of being a minority until I came to America. So with that being said, I don't want people speaking on my behalf, especially when they haven't spoken to me. So to bring the whole story up, I had this conversation with a person who, I was cool with at the time. And she was like, "Oh, well, no, they should have said it that way to the people. They should have. I don't understand why you are so willing to coddle white supremacy." And I'm like, I don't understand that, right?
Coddle.
Because I have come from a place where I can speak for myself, and I don't need anyone to speak on my behalf. So I don't want people to start speaking on my behalf. So I'm not happy about someone going to somebody else, creating an illusion that, well, all the black people at this company can't stand that you do this. And I'm like, you're just screwing it up for me, and you don't even speak for me. So black people also have this struggle because, one, like, another thing I used to get a lot is that, you talk like a white person. I'm like, I never knew that white was a color. Like our language had a color. Right. No, I'm like, like that's the thing. So we have to also hold ourselves accountable as black people against other ideas and stuff that we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't want. Go on.
I was gonna say someone tried to slip me up with that. I did this voice of well, he was like, "Yo, let me ask you a question. Why did you put a white person's voice on when you said that?"
Here we go.
And I was like, "Well, I was putting on a voice of happiness and being very like gung ho about getting this thing done.
Right.
If that sounds like a white person to you, then maybe you should align your thoughts,
Right.
Because that's not what I was thinking,
Right.
And-
So
Because he's associating happiness with being white, whereas everyone experiences happiness. And when we experience happiness, I know for me, I'm a person where when I'm happy, my voice definitely
gets
it pitches up
higher
Absolutely.
and more enthusiasm in what you're saying. I didn't know that was like a white person's voice or anybody else's voice. I thought that was like a emotion, but
Right.
But
Right.
the good thing about that situation was that you were able to say that, and then it was able to open the conversation into like, well, why is this a white person's voice, right?
Right.
I think part of the problem that we have as a core, and this is why I said the elusiveness of racism, is that there's ideas that, like, I remember having this one conversation with somebody that's saying that, black people can't be racist, right? And I'm just like,
I hear that a lot.
and I'm like, I don't understand, because
black men don't cheat.
Well, that one is fact.
That one's facts. we
For
might
the
have,
win.
yeah, we might have a very biased panel when it comes to that, so we should
I
probably
know.
leave that one alone.
I mean, is it biased if it's fact?
Oh, see, but
Ooh, see, now we getting into some dark waters.
yeah. Let's table that for the next meeting. But yeah, so I had someone say that, and the problem is that the words like racism and racist have become these big, huge, large things. I use all those words because they need to fully, encapsulate how large racism is, that
Right.
people immediately can distance themselves from things that are racist. So it's like, I was going to pause when I said this. Fuck it. Excuse me. We're going to have to beep that out. Donald Trump went and said, oh, all of these shithole countries, right?
Yeah, right. I remember that. Very early in his
yeah.
presidency, too.
And then said, not too long after, oh, I'm not a racist. It's like, because these words have become these big things, they live on their own. And it's like, as long as you're not wearing a white hood, riding a horse, and hanging black people, like if it's in Christmas ornaments, then you're not a racist. You're not a racist. And I'm like, no, you just assume that because I'm upset when you talk to me that I'm an angry black man. No, I'm angry because you talk to me like I'm an idiot and I want to punch you in the face. Is that aggressive? That should be experience for any person that tries anybody. I feel like
stay away from analogies like that. Go around hanging black people like they're Christmas ornaments.
Yeah, I was like,
I'm laughing, and I feel terrible laughing, but
who describes it like that?
I mean,
Jesus.
but was I wrong though? This is
It's
what they
not
did.
wrong,
This
though.
is what the KKK did, bro. And
I get it.
and a lot of these people are were and some still are the highest officials of the land. So, but
That's a fact.
this is just at the core. We need to start talking about race, and we need to start talking about race from the idea of prejudices. I cannot pronounce that word. Instead of just making it about racism.
Yeah, there's a lot of subjects. Money is one of them that is extremely taboo for some reason, and because of the taboo nature of those conversations, we don't really open it up to certain groups to really start extracting things and building from there. Like, I have a group of white friends that I'm in a WhatsApp group with one other black friend, and when him and I start getting into that dialogue about what's happening in Black America and things like that, they kind of stand back. And I feel like the reason why they stand back is because if they were to openly speak, somehow they could be judged based on whatever opinion, whether it be negative or positive. There's going to be some kind of judgment coming about something, and then there's certain things, if they were to say it, people would start questioning them. And I don't think that we need to look at it like that. It really should be more of an open conversation where people can speak just openly on how they feel. Because one of the things that I personally feel as a black person in America is I almost feel like if I were to be a white male, I would not know how to navigate in the current environment, because it seems like if anything you do, anything you accomplish, you're going to get some sort of negative feedback for it, because now it seems like the conversation has switched to everything being about white privilege. So if I were a white American male that is accomplishing great things, people are going to associate that with me being white. They're not going to look at the hard work that I'm putting in. You know, you've got all these different racial groups. You've got the Me Too movement. They all seem to be out with pitchforks for white men. And that's something that I think needs to be spoken about openly. If someone that were to be, you know, of Caucasian background were to say, hey, if you kind of look at it, I'm also dealing with my own hurdles as well, it'd be like, man, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You're a white guy. But I don't think that's the right mindset. And I think things like that really need to be discussed, because we all have our own hurdles. And just because you are a white person doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to reap the benefits that some of the more higher echelon whites are being, you know, that they're able to reap the benefits of. And the same thing goes with black people. We have black people in America who may never, ever encounter what racism is. And then there are those of us that are a bit lower on the quote-unquote totem pole that can't seem to accomplish anything just because you show up with your skin tone. Like you said, MVP, you have dreads. That's already going to be held against you. Facial hair held against you. Me, tall, dark, black. It's like the gamut. The hair, it's over. God forbid I go get tattoos. It'll be a wrap. So, you know, I just feel like a lot of that just comes from a place of understanding that's lacked. And that's where things need to be kind of opened up in order to, I guess, change the landscape a little bit. Even with that situation in Atlanta, do we know for a fact that that guy was racist, or did he truly have an issue and decided to go shoot these people up, or is it just being used as a scapegoat in terms of the whole thing where he says, you know, he has like an issue with his sexuality? Is he using
So you heard that?
I did hear that. That was a big part of it. They were saying that he said that he was a sex addict, and these places facilitate him being able to, you know, for lack of a better term, get his shit off. And
which makes no sense.
And those places don't even provide that type of service. They interviewed those people. They actually have signs in those places that say this is not a place for sex.
But here's my other question too. And you know what? I want to say, well, two parts. One, I definitely think that we should be more willing to have those conversations, and we should not be dismissing someone based on whatever their situation is.
Right.
And because that has led to so many problems. It's like with the fact that the Me Too era exists is because women were complaining that they were getting, you know, abused and having things happen to it, and people were like, "Oh no, yeah, you probably wanted it," or so. You know what I'm saying? Like that level of dismissal has caused problems across the board. So we should not do it. Like we should just not do it. The second thing is the potential of it being not racially motivated is a thing. I guess I have a hard time accepting that, and I'll tell you one reason why. It's
accepting that it's not racially motivated.
Yes.
Okay.
One because he drove like 200 something miles to there. That's like literally me driving from here to New York. That is a 4-hour trip, or you know, almost a 4-hour trip, right?
Right.
Two, it's what happened around it that's kind of frustrating to me. That is what triggers the racist feelings towards me. Like the police officer saying, like, he had a bad day. I don't listen. When I have a bad day, I do what people do. You come home, you turn on some GTA, and you drive some people off the road. Like you live in that life because you don't want to. Like you don't go out and kill somebody. Right. And then you have people like, oh well, you know, this is why we should have stronger gun laws. I'm like, we should deal with the racism that is there. So I don't know. Like, introduce that thought you've introduced now. I don't know. Like, is that an actual racially motivated? We don't know, and I don't know if we ever know. I just don't like that people have dismissed it with a like, oh yeah, well it's not that big of a deal, kind of thing. Like for you to say that he had a bad day, I don't give a fuck about his day when he killed 4 people.
We all have bad days. We don't go out and air out people because we had a bad day.
Right.
No. And then listen, you made a decision because you drove. You didn't drive around the corner. You understand? You drove a distance, so you had time to think about how bad a day you were having.
That's a serious level of premeditation right there.
That is deliberate action, and I don't want to care. I don't care about how bad your day is. So, at the core, I feel like what we really need to be having is regular, I call them challenging conversations. Because one of the things that I think that is kind of a problem is like looking at it like if you had acid reflux. Let's use a body analogy, right? If you get acid reflux on a regular basis, right? And you go to your doctor and your doctor says, "Man, here's some acid reflux pills," right? And the next time you have it, you take the pill, but your doctor never suggests that maybe, McDonald's you've been eating for freaking the last 25 years. It may be time to change that, right? Then what you're ended up happening is you're treating the symptom, and we're giving attention to the symptom.
The root.
At the core, this racism is the problem. How do you tackle racism? By one, having these conversations. And that's why for me, like, I try, even when it is frustrating for me, I try to put myself in situations where at least I there to be a voice for myself and my opinion. At the core, I think human beings care most about their own existence, their own, way of looking at things. And I feel like at the one of the problems at the core too is that there's a lack of representation in some of the places where decisions are being made. And so for me, I'm like, well, I'm going to try to put myself at like at my job, I try to put myself in places where I'm going to be the person that like I'm going to be probably the only black guy in that discussion, right? And it's one of the things I've noticed as a result is that people talk about like, the experience as a black person or the black person's like struggles secondary because it's not a thing that's important to them. And not and important might not be the right word. It's not something they personally can align themselves to.
Right.
So they are not necessarily going to be able to speak on that, and they're, or don't even feel comfortable speaking on it. So, I think we just have to force ourselves to have these conversations. And I think that everybody gets siloed in their own little echo chambers, and what happens is people don't stop and have those conversations. Those conversations are necessary, man. Like, you 100%. Have to have them. You have to have them. So, agree. I mean, we could go on and on with this for, for a long time. But, like, at the core, my biggest thing is I feel like we need to, one, call out things as you see it, and attract some of these behaviors and call them what they are.
Quick question. Do you check your friends?
I definitely do. I try to as much as possible.
Like, and sometimes I got friends who say some stuff that I think is racist, and, this could be like a black friend or whoever, and I'm like...
Oh, you mean check in that sense? Hell yeah, I check my
Yeah, friends. That's what I meant. That's
anything crazy, anything that I ever... not that I hear it, but if I do hear a friend saying anything that is even off color, no pun intended, I definitely check them on that because... I'm just not the type of person that I'm not going to be accepting that. Not around me. Like, It doesn't matter if it's about, maybe if it's about black people, I might let it go because it's like, you're a part of the struggle.
Right.
I understand, it's internal. So, yeah, let's be acting up sometimes. Like, I could get with that. But if you're over here talking wild spicy about other racial groups, and it's starting to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, I'm definitely going to call you on it because the thing that I have to ask myself is, where does that go from here? Is it just you speaking, or are you really harboring some problems internally? And if that's the case, you need to go deal with that. I just have no room for that around me. I wasn't raised that way, and I refuse to allow that to take place in my own environment, whether it be out or it's just not cool. I'm not a fan of that at all because I know what it's like to be on the opposite end of that.
Correct.
So there's no way I'm allowing that to perpetuate itself in my environment.
Yeah, so I agree. I think one of the good things is like, just like with the both of you being here as my friends, I don't think we are the type that would have like something that's like super crazy said about another race and not say something.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I like. I think, but it goes to kind of some of the problems we were saying before. Is like, okay, well, our friend groups, though they they intersect differently, we're like-minded in thinking.
Right.
But when you have people that are like-minded in the negative way, do they ever include somebody in that? Like, you understand?
Right.
So
Right,
will they even have some of the conversations that they need to in front of somebody who would check them? Because they know that if they have it, in front of, K Styles, it might be a problem. So that's the thing. That's really the question. That's where it gets a little bit interesting. I mean, at the end of this, to wrap this subject up, we need to be more empathetic about people's struggles and issues, and we need to not. One, the key thing is not dismiss people when they say things because you think you know what's going on.
Right.
Like at the core, you might think you know what's going on, and that's it. It's a challenge for humans because we don't do like our whole brains. It's like the reason you don't have to think that hard to tie your shoe is because your brain is imprinted with like this is how you do it. But we need to, especially in this day and age, after everything we've gone through to this point, we need to be better about being empathetic about other people's struggles and issues.
Absolutely.
So,
and not be so dismissive
Yeah.
of other people's struggles. And with all that said, definitely thoughts and prayers go out to not just the victims of the most recent situation, but anyone who has had to deal with any suffering at the hands of racism. And then mental health, too. Check in on people because a lot of this, I think, goes back to just poor mental health.
Yo,
Agreed.
I always do that, man. I think it's important to just like, even when I know my friend is going through something, whether it's positive or negative, I'm like, yo, what emotions were you going through when this happened? Just so they can voice it out and get it off their chest. I think it's very important that, you have those conversations with your friends or, coworkers or whoever you see, like they might need someone to talk to or something like that. Like, just recently someone was like, you gonna be annoying to say it, but they was like, yo, I'm gonna kill myself if I do this. And I'm like, no, first of all, you're not gonna do that. It was a callback. It's a callback. I know I'm annoying. I'm annoying.
No. I get it for sure.
But yeah, like
sure.
super quick. I know people were like playing, but I'm like, some people might not be playing.
Yeah.
And so you always got to be like, hey man, we here, like, here for you.
Yeah,
Like.
and it's true. Too many unchecked behaviors manifest themselves in negative ways. So I agree with you.
Yeah.